Intense pressure of GCSEs, it is a lot. Also juggling like sports and hobbies and social life as well.
What advice would you give someone trying to rebuild their confidence after burnout or failure?
We need to befriend ourselves to become our own best friend. You know, we are with ourselves for the longest.
Was there a personal experience with stress and burnout that inspired your journey into this work?
Yes, absolutely, and I think I just gave some of it away. I developed glandular fever, just picked it up. Lots of people get over it after 2 weeks. My body decided to be super special and hold on to it for years, but I've always been a very strong character and very determined.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you for coming on. You okay?
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, good today, thank you.
So my first question, could you explain to me and viewers how you got into the stress and burnout prevention field? Could you explain who you are and what your business is as well?
Sure. So I run Thrive Wellbeing, which I set up about 10 years ago, mostly from a mixture of both personal and professional experience.
Yeah.
So ill health often leads people into moments of revelation. Definitely that's what happened to me. So I left the corporate advertising world, retrained within wellbeing, continued to just add more modalities in.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed over the last 10 years, initially I was trained in kinesiology. Kinesiology is a East and Western medicine, and it's all to do with using muscle testing to get to the root of the problem, find out what's really going on. So your body is giving you all the clues and all the answers, you just have to look into it.
Yeah.
But what I found was, although I adored this, that was great, everybody is an individual, but there are so many commonalities, and I realised that this kind of stress, even in the modern term, you know, when people say like, I'm so stressed, but when we are in this stress zone, there is so much pressure on the body, and that's showing up in so many different ways, like physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's just really where my interest kind of came in.
So my second question is, what did you want to be as a kid? Did you want to be what you are today, or?
No. As a child, I was so precocious. I was the scholarship child, and I was probably really annoying. I know my older brother thought that I was the good one and he was the naughty one. Poor guy. And I think the thing is, my identity was completely wrapped up in that. I was such an overachiever, and I wanted to be a lawyer. That was just my desire from early age. Well, I think early age, when I was in primary school, we did a project on Egyptians, and I thought, oh, archaeologist sounds good. So again, slightly pretentious. And then the lawyer part came in. I don't know where it came from, probably all the TV shows I was watching at the time. And I just thought, I really like debating. I really like learning. This sounds fun. And that was the pathway, so much so, Harvey, honestly, you won't believe it. I went to this lovely school, fee paying, and my parents asked them to put on Latin GCSE.
Wow.
There were 3 of us who really wanted to go into law. Like, I look back and it was wild. Like, I think it was my 11th GCSE. I was so overloaded that kind of gives a clue, because that linked into some ill health that kind of came later on. But what I think was interesting was I was so focused on this achievement and career pathway, but I had forgotten that actually on the side, all the stuff that I enjoyed doing was I read books about people kind of overcoming adversity. I was reading about psychology. I was on the school listening service. So in a way, there were all of these clues, but I did not look at any of them at all. I was just completely focused on law.
Yeah.
Spoiler, that didn't happen.
And my third question, was there a personal experience with stress and burnout that inspired your journey into this work?
Yes, absolutely, and I think I just gave some of it away. So it was during the intense pressure of GCSEs. It is a lot, isn't it? And when you're also juggling like sports and hobbies and social life as well. I developed glandular fever, just picked it up. Lots of people get over it after 2 weeks. My body decided to be super special and hold on to it for years.
Wow.
So I just kept getting more poorly, just more tired, more infections, like my immune system was just really low. And I was just like, this isn't me. I don't have enough energy to do all the things that I love to do. And the doctor at the time just said, oh, just stop playing so much netball, stop playing so much sport, focus on your academics. Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
And it just got worse, to the point that I took a gap year. And even during that, I was in Hungary working for a law firm, getting my experience, then out in New Zealand working in a school. And I had to come back from both of those placements early, because I was like, I can't get over this level of fatigue.
Yeah.
Didn't know. There was no other information from the medical team at the time. Went off to university, and within 2 weeks, complete crash. I remember I had tonsillitis. I came home for about 3 weeks. It was ridiculous. I was reading English literature with a viewpoint to do my law conversion afterwards, because already at this point I knew I wasn't ready to be able to cope with the vigorousness of law. And And I just got worse. And then when I was about 20 or 21, I had to leave university, and I was actually bedbound for about 6 months, which was a incredibly dark time. And actually, it's funny, you know, when you feel tingly when you talk about it. And my mum, I remember things like she was having to wash my hair for me. I couldn't get in the bath by myself. I was so wobbly. I was so fatigued. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I had gone from this effervescent, very active person to thinking like my brain's not working. My body is aching all the time. Like my stomach was being weird. I couldn't feel like, I didn't know what foods I couldn't have anymore. Everything just felt like it was collapsing. Eventually, we tried all sorts of different alternative therapies, which at the time, bless them, I didn't believe in any of these at all. I thought it was all a load of nonsense. So sorry about that, but that's the truth. And then my mum, we stumbled across this one called kinesiology, and suddenly things made sense. She said, there's not just one thing, Sarah. Your virus has turned into a post-virus. Your adrenals are completely overwhelmed. Your digestion. There were just so many things. And I thought, brilliant, we can break this down and have a plan. So that's kind of where that came in. And it was tremendous. And that's what drew me to do what I do now. Then on recovery, I think like a lot of people, when you've had a very dark time, I mean, it was about 8 years of my life, this in total, using a wheelchair, learning to walk again. It was a lot. I thought, well, that's done. I'll neatly pop it in a box and I'm going to move to London because that's a great plan. I fell into the world of advertising. I'd found a job locally in Bath. We lived in the southwest of England at the time, and I started that. And within a year, I had then thought I can just about cope with work if I have some sleeps, if I look after myself. I remember my boss at the time honestly said, is it time for your milk and cookies now, Sarah? It was so patronising, but I readily said, yes, thank you, I need to go and have a lie down, and then I could do my afternoon. Looking back, it is quite wild that I continued, but I've always been a very strong character and very determined. So I went up to London, worked in advertising, absolutely loved it, but it was quite crazy.
Hard work.
The pressure, presenting to clients. Like I worked on clients like Nestle and Coca-Cola. A lot of work. Huge teams, massive budgets. Like you have to get it right all the time. That did not work well for me. I was living on, I was getting a croissant every morning. I was living on coffee. There was drinking at the end of every week. It was just, for me, I knew I wasn't living in alignment, but I didn't know that was the word at the time. I just was like, oh, this wasn't quite what I thought life was going to be like. But I kept relapsing, kept getting poorly. And then really sadly, my dad died suddenly, and that triggered a massive relapse. And I switched straight into burnout, and I couldn't cope with anything. And it was almost an epiphany moment, if that isn't too grand a thought. And I thought, this is not right. This is not what life's supposed to be. This is certainly not why I've spent so long getting better. So I called up my mum and I was like, is there any chance she'd let me move home? Because I think I now need to retrain in wellbeing. And luckily she said yes.
Wow, that's nice. And my other question, you describe yourself as a root cause health detective. Can you explain what that actually includes?
So my official title is Wellbeing Practitioner, but I find that everybody can say that they're like a wellbeing coach these days. So I try to say practitioner because it will explain that I have my qualifications in kinesiology, nutrition, positive psychology coaching, counselling, mental health. You bring all these additional things in. But I remember when I first started out, and having been in the marketing world, I quite like a little jingle and a little thing. So I thought, health detective, that sounds quite cool. Because for me, it's all about exploring why and what's going on and why is that happening. So it's all about that delving deeper. And the root causes, because certainly kinesiology, somebody could come to you with a list of symptoms, but you're wanting to get to the root of but why are these things happening? So you might have headaches, you might have digestive issues, you might have some sleep disturbances, but what's going on underneath that? And that's where I always want to probe and get down into it. So it's a mixture of physical, nutrition, emotion, energetic work, bringing it all together. I liken it often to talking about trying to bring pieces of a jigsaw together, and then you can build up the whole picture, and that's definitely what I like to do the most.
Okay. And from your perspective, why is self-awareness so important, especially when it comes to preventing burnout? You mentioned burnout before.
I did, and also the fact that I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And I think that's quite key for a lot of people these days. We do sometimes tend to just fall into life, don't we, and just follow patterns, or we've started down one career pathway, so we'll just keep going. And the self-awareness part is taking a step back and just checking in with yourself. Is this how I want to be living? Is my energy where I want it to be? Do I have time for hobbies? Do I have time for sports? Do I have time to see my friends? And am I eating what I want to eat? It's so easy to fall into quick instant habits, isn't it? And certainly a lot of like the sugary, delicious things that you think, and they should be the treats, but they become more of like a staple. So for me, that's the self-awareness, is just checking back in. And I think you can't change what you can't see, and also what you don't know. So you need to understand your baseline and like where your level of health and well-being is, or anything in life really. What is life's expectations for you? And then spot the signs when things are kind of starting to change.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned patterns. Stress patterns are a big part when identifying burnout. How can someone identify their own stress triggers early on, do you think?
I think a lot of this is about taking that step back and getting that perspective. And if we can start to break it down into checking what our mind is doing, what our body's saying, and what our behaviour is doing. So with our mind, how are our thoughts? You know, are we constantly anxious? Are we living on that kind of adrenaline spike? Are we overthinking everything? Are we catastrophizing all the time? You know, if something happens, you go, oh, well, I've just had the most worst day ever. I often, with my clients, say, really? Or did one particular thing happen? Because we seem to be talking about it as an entire day has now been written off. Your body gives you clues all the time. You know, we'll notice that there could be some tension in your jaw. A lot of clients come to me and are quite worried because they've got like a racing heart or some heart palpitations. They're obviously very worried from a cardiac point of view. But once we've checked them out or advised them to go to a doctor, we can then see maybe it's linked in with the mind and how the body is doing. And again, that kind of adrenaline, anxiety fueled. And also then our behaviour. Big clues are you being a little bit snappier than usual? You know, are you crying a little bit more frequently? Are you procrastinating? Are you putting off tasks for a lot? These are all clues that we can kind of bring together, and we can start, I like it to be like our own health detective and be like, oh, yes, I'm noticing this.
Yeah.
But also, truthfully, Harvey, sometimes we don't see it ourselves. Sometimes we need friends and family to see it. And even for all of my self-awareness, and I'd like to think I'm pretty good at this stuff and self-care, my husband often has to say to me, you're being very snappy at the moment, darling. And I'm like, okay. But it's really great because sometimes we need somebody to kind of hold up a mirror or say stop to us. Yeah. And I'll then realise that I've been staying up too late, or I've not been kind of doing my bedtime routine, which I really like to do. I think that the more that we can know about ourselves, you know, we can notice.
Yeah, okay. And going back to that jigsaw thing as well, it's nice if you tell more people, the more people can help and just put that jigsaw together as well. I think
you really start to know yourself. You know, I know when I was in London, I lived with a lovely girl called Sarah, and she really loved her tennis. And I remember that we both had gone for the same job. We were doing the same job at the same time. And my second interview with this big firm up in London, they interviewed me in a pub, and they said, oh, it's really funny because every Friday the wine, the beer trolley comes along, we go out every night, you have to do this, be part of the team. They said the same thing to her, but somehow she was way ahead of her time. Somehow she said, well, no, actually, I don't do that because that's not my scene, and I play tennis every Saturday morning. Yeah. Game changer. I didn't know that about myself. I fell into the people-pleasing mode of, oh, yes, I must do that. That's what I have to do to keep my job, like ridiculous levels of pressure. And I think for her, for example, that type of thing, like she knew what she needed to do to fuel herself properly.
Yeah, okay. And what are some of the common stress patterns you see in people?
So, although everybody is an individual and unique, there are always commonalities. And I think some of them we can categorize as things like perfectionism, where we are constantly, you know, if it is not perfect, it's not submittable. You know, that classic, you know, you're still up at 2:00 in the morning, whether it's an essay or dissertation for university, or whether it is a project or a presentation, but you're thinking, no, I just have to do it quite right, or the formatting's not quite right. You know, you can just do things all the time. Again, also that we can then have that people pleasing, but way too much. So where it's not just necessarily talking to a friend and they say, do you want Indian and Chinese? And you just say, whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it is even more of following whatever somebody else says that they want to do, or kind of patterns of behaviour where you just, like I did in that London advertising agency, I just conformed. I wasn't myself. I wasn't an identity. You can also get into that complete adrenaline-fueled cycle where you just got to keep going like a hamster on a wheel. You cannot stop because you know if you stop, you're going to fall off a cliff. And then also you can get that almost like armour-like response of like shutters come down. I'm absolutely fine, which is not true. But again, you don't feel like you're able to show any kind of chink of weakness at all because again, you'll stop. The other one that I see a lot in people and awfully, I feel it's really tricky, but especially in women and then especially in mothers, is this like self-abandonment / I like to call it martyrdom, because it's a really strong word that is really divisive. People will have quite a physical response to that. Nobody's trying to make themselves into a martyr, but what they are often doing, and I still do this sometimes myself, we put ourselves at the bottom of the list. So that for me is like another stress pattern where you're constantly giving and pushing and doing everything for everybody else, and you're like way down there.
Yeah, okay. And then moving on to creating healthy coping skills. In your experience, what healthy coping mechanisms have you seen that actually work when managing stress?
There are quite a lot that come out that people will talk about exercise, doing sport, that's great, any kind of physicality, any kind of movement. My only caveat alongside that would be, what else do you have? So like if you get injured, how's your mental health going to be? Because if your sport is your life and your like identity outside of work and you suddenly can't do that, that's no longer a healthy coping strategy for you. So you can have fun things like socializing and music, anything that is like a nice activity. But I also like to do more nervous system regulation tools, breath work, EFT, some different elements of tapping. There are all sorts of different like Eastern medicine things that we can do to our body. Breath work is one that comes up a lot. It can get very complicated. I really like to keep it simple. There's this lovely one that you can do called box breathing, where you breathe in, hold, out, hold for 4. But sometimes when I do that, I worry that I'm going to like hyperventilate or lose my breath. So the biggest thing that I think is easy is you just breathe out for longer. So like really simply, so if you want to give it a go, and just give it a try. So just make sure your like legs are nice and flat on the floor. And we're literally going to breathe in for about 4 and breathe out for about 7. So we're just going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that feeling okay?
Yeah.
Not running out of breath?
No.
You can also do that. I like to count because it takes your brain away from whatever kind of panic thought that you're in. You can also literally just be saying to yourself, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. You can move on to some more lovely like affirmations like, you know, I'm inhaling peace and I'm exhaling tension, but it depends what mood state you're in. If you're very stressed, that's ridiculous.
Don't do that.
You just can't do it. I feel like I'm literally, I'm you know, swearing at myself in my mind. You have to do something that's calming. You can also do, one of my other favourite things is EFT or tapping. One of the quick things you can do that you'll see people a lot kind of tapping up here and all around the face. But one of the quick things you do is just on the side of your hand, so just along the side of your little finger, you can just tap and repeat a calming sentence. Some of my clients have said that they're panicked that they're going to say the wrong thing. So I start with their caveat of like, even though I may feel really stupid doing this right now, even though I've got no idea what I'm doing, I'm willing to give this a go because actually I'm feeling quite stressed. There we go. Right. I want to take a deep breath. I want to let things go. I'd rather feel calmer. You know, you can give yourself a whole conversation. It's astonishing. Honestly, try it later. Report back.
And then what about habits? How can people replace unhealthy habits with more positive ones, do you think?
So the first thing we need to say here is a safety message is you don't try and suddenly stop something. I remember when I was doing my self-harm and suicide prevention course, the biggest thing we learned was you cannot take away a coping strategy from somebody because obviously that can be catastrophic. So what you need to do is just start to reintroduce things. So just start with a bit of awareness of, I noticed that, let's use alcohol, to be honest, because a lot of people will say that's fun. Often it can tip over into a habit or being dependent on something. So just notice like, I noticed that I'm not just drinking at the weekends. Okay, how do I feel about that? I think I might be having a little bit too much. Okay, is there something I could do about it? I could maybe say I could drink Thursday to Sunday, Friday to Sunday, you know, whatever you need to do. So it's often then about replacing it as well, not restricting. So if you're like, right, well, those are what I do on a Thursday or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I need something else on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What else could I bring in? Could I read a book? Could I do some meditation? Do I need a bath? Do I need to do some journaling? Do I need, what else can I do to distract myself, but in a positive way? So that's what I mean when we're talking about that replacement, but doing it really gently. And when you are able to make a change, like be like a good coach, really congratulate yourself, be proud that you'd be like, oh my gosh, I noticed that and I didn't do it. That's fantastic. We need that, don't we? We need to be encouraging.
And then moving on to root cause and reconnection. What does everything is linked mean to you?
I just love it. I just think that the whole thing is linked, our mind, our body, our energy, our environment. I don't think you can separate it out. And we'll probably come back to the analogy of the jigsaw again, won't we? Like, we are just a sum of everything. Mm-hmm. We're humans. We're not labels. We're not, just our social. We're not just our academia or whatever it might be. So everything's connected, our thoughts, our feelings, what we consume, both nutrition-wise or hydration-wise, but also what we're consuming, like in terms of media, the friends that we spend time with. What's that saying? You're the sum of, I think it's the 5 people you spend the most time with. You start to pick up their mannerisms. So if you're with somebody who's in a real energy draining situation, maybe they're going through a really hard time, but they're constantly draining you, that's when you can be like, oh, I'm noticing that. Maybe I can be doing something else. So for me, everything is connected. So people will come to me in my clinic, they'll come and say, I think I'm struggling with some foods. Can you check me for food intolerances? Oh my gosh. I also had one lady come in with 2 pages of things she's told she couldn't eat, which first of all is nonsense. It's just way too much. It's way too restrictive. But what it was some were foods where the body was being triggered, but a lot was emotion. Can you imagine the stress that her body was under? She went to eat and she was in that panic state. So immediately you have this surge of adrenaline. Your stomach and everything is going to constrict. Your stomach's not even going to kind of produce the stomach acid because you're just in this fear state. And when you're in the fear state, all of the extremities are going to lock down. You can see what I'm doing here with my hands. Yeah. So it all pulls in together, digestion slows because your body's getting ready to go into fight or flight and be like, where's the danger? So digestion can be linked to foods, but it's often emotion, it's often environment as well. So that's kind of one way of what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
Is this making sense?
It does make sense, yeah. And then,
because I love it, Harvey, you see, that's the thing.
No, I can tell you love it. I can tell that you're really passionate as well, passionate about it. And I remember that, what's the word, visual, don't think it's visual the word, but the jigsaw thing.
Yeah, the analogy, because I think, honestly, the biggest gift I think we can give to ourselves in life is, number 1 is to be kind to ourselves, but number 2 is to understand ourselves. And if we can do these 2 things, we're going to live a much more harmonious lifestyle.
Yeah, okay. And then moving on to workplace wellbeing and culture. In the workplace, many people feel they have to hide how they're really feeling. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's such a stigma, isn't there? I think we feel that we have to perform. We often feel like we have to assume this corporate identity, if we're going out to work for the day, that we couldn't possibly be a human with thoughts and feelings and emotions, or even an entire backstory. And especially as parents, you may have lived half a day by the time you're turning up at work, but you have to, on goes the mask and off you go. And I think I'm hoping that we're moving away from that level of professionalism and we're moving more into more free flow, more human led, which is the most important. I think we have an issue when people are labelled, and I think then our self-worth gets tied up in that labelling of our identity becomes our job title or our salary or our house or our car. Lovely, great if that's what drives you, material things, but maybe we could also look at more internal values, of how we feel like we're doing ourselves. Overworking, I think, has been so often rewarded. People are congratulated, aren't they, for staying late or getting stuff done. And what I find really quite terrifying, especially in the finance and legal sector, is the amount of clients who come up to me and say, it's okay, because there's always peaks and troughs, there'll always be a down. And then I'll ask them when, and they'll say, well, around New Year, maybe there's a couple of days. Yeah. And apart from that, they're always on and they're doing these wild, crazy hours. And they haven't even noticed they're in a complete stress pattern. They're in this survival mode. And we're going back to that kind of adrenaline state. They're just in it so much that they don't know. I think also people worry about bringing anything mental health to the table. We know the statistics that, 1 in 4 of us will be struggling at any point in time, and we need to be way more kind to people and be asking, how are you, and how are you again? Always ask how are you twice, and pause and listen. We need to be able to bring this into work, I believe. But I also believe, and it is a bugbear of mine, that wellbeing needs to go beyond just a tick box. I get brought in quite a lot, which I'm delighted to do as a start out, to kind of offer a talk or a workshop, and that's great. And also, we don't want it to stay surface level, do we? We want to go deeper. I had somebody today literally say to me, and I work with schools as well, she's a 16-year-old, and she said, well, schools just pretend to care, don't they? They put a poster up, they'll have a talk about it once, but they don't actually do anything. They're just all about attendance and achievement. Yeah. And I find that quite sad. It's quite disheartening to hear in this day and age. I feel like there has been a real shift in culture, but it does need to go further.
Yeah. Okay. And then my other question, what does a wellbeing-led culture look like in practice? One that goes beyond token gestures or wellbeing weeks?
So in an ideal world, I have this like picture of this like big Google office, but you have breakout areas. You know, you're treating people as humans. You cannot be on all the time. So we need to go with flexibility of working styles around our energy or life events or things that we kind of might have going on. Parents talk about this a lot when they need to do that, but other people might have that as well. And especially if you just come off the back of this massive project, you know, you need to have a lull, don't you? You can't just, oh my gosh, I get exhausted thinking about it, you know, the go, like your brain will turn to mush. I'd also love to see a lot more like stress literacy in the workplace. So like awareness of emotion, awareness of mental health, awareness about how you can reset your nervous system through some simple pausing, some slowing down, some breath work. There's a whole load more stuff that I can share about this later. Yeah. I also would like to see things being shifted away from performance culture to wellbeing culture. You know, people are leaving jobs. The younger generation, your generation. Oh gosh, I read something. It was astonishing. I think it was something like 80% of people will not stay in a job past 6 months unless they feel like they have purpose and bring value. That is astonishing. Yeah, no, whereas people of my parents' generation would stay in a job for 40 years. Yeah. You know, my husband just left the military last year after 20 years. You know, people stay in jobs for a long time. You need to feel that you're supported, that you've got room to grow, to thrive, to learn, to develop. So I work closely with HR departments in order to try and embed this culture in a little bit more. And I have a 6-week program called Align, which is all about this, because I'm working with people from C-suite to heads of department to line managers, but you need it to go across the whole department. Yeah. That you know, every single person working there needs to be able to say, I feel safe coming up and saying X, Y, Z's going on for me right now, bringing it to the table. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because I had, when I did A-levels last year or the year before, the assignment question was, is culture the most important in the workplace? Ooh. Would you agree with that? Or
100%. Yeah. I feel like just an absolute, yes, I would. I feel I want to expand upon that. But I think it is the most important thing. It is the thing that people are going to look, that's going to attract new staff in, it's going to attract a new talent, and it's also going to retain them. Yeah. That's going to save your company money, bottom line. I could come up with facts and figures, but let's just keep it really, really simple. You know, you want to bring people in, you want people to be happy, you want people to work there. Obviously, life is not a bed of roses. I'm not coming here like sprinkling wellbeing fairy dust. What I am saying is, let's take a breath, let's like release the shoulders, let's be a bit more human about this, and let's really work with people to draw the best out of them, because I can't tell you the amount of people who have come to me over time, like their whole body is just shutting down is too strong a word, slightly wobbling, like malfunctioning away, and a lot of it comes from stress and saying, I'm just really underperforming and I'm just really worried, and you go to work terrified about what your boss is going to say. You start to double check your work, you then start working too long an hours. Do you see, there's just this whole classic cycle which leads to burnout. So yeah, 100% culture is the most important thing.
Yeah, okay. And then moving on to building self-esteem, what advice would you give someone trying to rebuild their confidence after burnout or failure?
I would say we need to befriend ourselves. Okay. We need to become our own best friend. You know, we are with ourselves for the longest period of time. Yeah. We often talk appallingly badly to ourselves. You know, if you were to talk to a friend like how we talk to ourselves, you wouldn't have any friends. It can be hard. I've done this practice with clients where you start to say kind things about yourself, or like noticing a little bit of gratitude, and it can be really hard. And often people kind of can mutter it and look down at the floor. Over time, you want to start to build up until you can maybe even get to the point where you say it into a mirror. But that is feel like relatively advanced stuff. Can you imagine sitting in front of the mirror and being like, you are awesome, like super American cheese. So don't go overloaded, but start with what's real. Like, you know, you're a really kind person. I really like how you do this for somebody else. We also need to reclaim our identity, because it can often be completely shattered. I know that for myself, like I lost all sense of who I was when I had gone through this. I felt like I was literally starting again. And I also needed to unlearn a whole load of habits that weren't even mine to begin with. They'd been thrust upon me, like the drinking culture on a Friday night, for example. I was, that's not really me. You know, I like a little bit of Prosecco now and again, obviously, but I don't want to be doing that consistently. I'd rather take my dog out for a walk, honestly, in the morning. I'd rather feel light. So we need to kind of start to reconnect with who we are, separate out our identity from our performance, take the tiny steps, take the small wins again. You can maybe sense a bit of a vibe, this kind of kindness, isn't it? I think that's what really needs to permeate through.
Yeah, okay. And then a lot of people push away their negative thoughts. Is this correct, or should we be reframing them thoughts instead of pushing them away?
So I see two things here. One is people push them away and literally trying to like stuff them into a box and sit on it so it won't come out. Or you go into toxic positivity, like everything's going to be fantastic, it's all going to be okay, which again is nonsense. And you can't believe either one. So we need to find this happy middle, which is about reframing it, like super gently. So yes, sometimes we're allowed to say to ourselves, give ourselves permission to say, gosh, I actually don't want to think about that right now. I do this a lot with clients. I feel like I literally touch my head and I'm pulling the thought out. I hold it out in front and I go, this is huge. This is really big. I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to pop it to the side of me. I will use, this won't work for people who are just listening, but I will use a lot of pulling it out my head, putting it to the side of me. When we use these visuals, it can be really helpful. Energetic wise, you're moving something around. So we need to find this gentle middle ground. And I like to ask 3 questions, is it true? Is this thought that I'm having, is it true? Is it helpful to think this way? And is there a kinder way that I could look at this, or a better way? And also a 4th one I often like to bring is this even my thought to begin with, or is this somebody else's?
Yeah.
Because there's so many beliefs that we just absorb that we just don't even notice. You must be a good person, elbows off the table. These are all kind of silly ones, basic ones. But if you go through life believing all of that, you can go and have dinner with somebody and judge them immediately because they put their elbows on the table, and you never get to find out if they're a good person or not. And they probably are.
Yeah.
There's kind of like a lot of these silly little rules. So if we can, with these thoughts, try to understand the root, like root cause comes through everything I do. Is this coming from a place of fear? Is this coming from a place of conditioning? Like, is this coming from childhood lessons? Where is this coming from? Why am I feeling so overloaded? How can I break this down? How can I reframe it? Like, that's emotional maturity, isn't it? And that's when we can start to take control. And that's when you can feel a sense of calmness descend because it's putting you back in. Do you know what? I remember back in the ill health days of mine, I didn't know you could change your thoughts. I thought your thoughts were facts.
Right.
I stumbled over that. I thought thoughts were facts. But they're not. They're fiction. They're made up. We have over 60,000 of these a day. I cannot possibly remember them all. There'll be crazy things, won't they? Like noticing a fly buzzing or something, or, the room's a bit warm. They're completely subconscious. What I find fascinating is how much we can learn more, that we can start to control them and eventually manage them. But the first step is always just that awareness and noticing. And if you're noticing something really negative all the time, you can just be like, wow, okay. I think we all have that friend or person that we notice who's just moaning about everything all the time. Yeah. And we need to be like, hey, is there anything positive in your day? And try and jolt them out of it. Because often it's just habit, isn't it? It's just a pattern that we're in.
Yeah. And then we've got a tradition on the podcast where viewers submit their questions via Slido. So I've got 2 questions for you. The relationship between socialising and well-being is clear, but social obligations can be a huge source of stress. How can we be social without burning out?
It's pretty marvellous, isn't it? I love that. Thank you. So in order to answer it, I would have preferred some more information, like, is this personal or professional obligations that we're talking about? Because I think that can give us a bit of an idea. Okay. Because professionally, there may be things that we have to attend. There may be some things that we have to adhere to, but we could have that check-in, couldn't we, with our line manager of like, what is the rule? What do we need to do? What is the requirement here? How long do I need to go for? If it's from a personal perspective, again, hopefully we could get into the point where we could speak up more openly about it. And let's say somebody's, gosh, I don't know, always saying we start a social at like 9:00 at night. You could start to joke, which I have done with my friends, and be like, oh, I need a bit more beauty sleep than that. Could we go out earlier? So you know how you're just kind of taking that bit of ownership. Yeah. But I also think we need to understand ourselves. People often talk about introvert or extrovert as a personality type, but it's a sliding scale. And we also need to be much more aware about neurodivergent brains these days. So it may be that actually you get complete sensory overwhelm in situations and allowances need to be made. But again, it's tricky, but we need to be able to know that about ourselves, self-awareness, and then be able to speak up about ourselves, like with that communication. There are some tools that you can use as well. So you can do that EFT that we talked about, tap on the side of the hand. You could use affirmations. I started going to then like a power pose. You could kind of hold that, do some breath work. I also like to do something called a central zip up. So you take your hand from your tummy button up to your chin, and you're literally zipping up, and it's like an energy coat of armour.
Right, okay.
It's astonishing. I love it. So just, you can just try this before you've got to go out. Take your shoulders back, take a deep breath, tapping. Right, even though I don't really want to do this, I can go for a short period of time and set some boundaries. Like, I'm going to go for 1 hour. And then at the end, maybe you could reward yourself with something, because it will have been huge.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's quite a lot in there that we could take back the control and ownership of.
Yeah. And do you do that as well when you go?
I do this all the time. I do this daily, genuinely.
Right, okay.
There's a lot of stuff that I'll think, oh, I'll do that, and then I don't get around to it. I will always use the tapping. The zip up I use all the time. So between clients, I would always do it, because I would feel like I would have to cleanse the energy. I need to shift away from one person and get into the new place. And even though I've been doing what I do for over a decade now, I can still struggle with that self-confidence level. Or if somebody comes to me and they've got a huge health history going on, occasionally I can feel overwhelmed and have that imposter syndrome of, I'm not a doctor. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But I'm incredibly well qualified, and I've treated thousands of hours worth of people. So I will sit there and I will zip up and I'll do an affirmation. I'll remind myself of, why I'm good at what I do. And I will feel so much better and ready to then see the person.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I met you at Greenhouse, the Greenhouse event, and I've only started going to networking events this year, and every networking event I go to, I'm always nervous to meet new people and stuff like that. Do you feel like that for networking events, and do you do any?
I think that we all feel like that all the time. I think some people are better at hiding it than others.
Yeah.
I know I met you and I met Hannah, who's been on the podcast already, and she was the first person, and I literally turned around to her at the bar. I was starting to physically shake, because although I had done a lot of this prep work, I had still got in there, and you have that jolt to the nervous system of, oh gosh, we're here now. So I kind of took a breath, went and got myself a cup of tea. I was giving myself a little talking to. You will often see me doing a little subtle tapping on the side of my hand, and I was doing that, and I turned around to Hannah and I said, hi, I'm new. I was literally rather gauche, but I just blurted it out and I said, and then I get into this verbal diarrhea, and I was like, I'm new, I only moved to Jersey last year, I don't know anybody, and I'm launching my business, ha ha ha, nervous laughter. But actually, she was very kind and said that was rather endearing. But she had just said, gosh, me too, I was new last year. But what was really interesting for me was I had also gone there on a mission. So I do feel that, I do think some of this comes with experience and age and wisdom. But the older I've gotten, the less I care about what other people think, and the more I think, well, what am I doing here? So I had gone there thinking, I know that I'm a really experienced business owner. In the UK, I was, I had a wait list for clients to come to see me. Schools were asking for me, companies. That was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. That's not being big-headed, because that's not my style. It was just word of mouth had built over so long. We moved here last year. I've got 2 small children. I have to start again around them. It's a big undertaking. So I have to do a lot of prep work at home. I have to be really clear about what my goals are. Networking is one right now. Coming on your podcast is amazing, because I can be like, hi Jersey, I'm here. I'm following up with as many leads as possible. I think I've got 2 coffee dates and a dog walk booked in with somebody else next week from Greenhouse, which is awesome. And it's all just about, I think, being human and being able to say, gosh, I'm feeling really nervous too, because you bond over it, don't you?
Yeah, I definitely felt better when I said I don't know any people, and then you sat next to me, didn't you? And you said, yeah, same, I don't know anyone.
Same. And then it turned out that most of our table were all completely new, and then by then we're swapping numbers and going to meet up. And again, I've connected with a couple of girls who are in Guernsey, and we might not catch up, but we could pop a couple of little messages, and it's just all about being nice, being kind, isn't it? Yeah.
And then my other Slido question, as a mother and business owner, how do you personally stay regulated?
Regulated.
Can't read my own handwriting.
Well, we could go, because there's emotional regulation.
Yeah, stay regulated and avoid burnout. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. Yes. So I often talk about, I feel like this has come from one of my clients, because I talk about feeling regulated quite a lot, like that emotional regulation, like staying in control of who you are and what's going on. What I would say is that nobody has everything together. I was going to insert a swear word, but we won't. Nobody has their stuff together. There is no perfection. So that's the biggest lesson, is to stop chasing it. I'll be honest, it's really hard. I have a 5 and a 2-year-old. I have a husband who has left a military career, has come over here for a job. So there's a lot of pressure on him to perform, and he's doing really well, but I wanted to support him. And yet I'm also have my whole own identity, and it's really important to me. I'm really good at what I do and I want to reach more people and to be able to do that, but I need to put the time in. So timing, boundaries, I know the hours that I can work. Sometimes you're in a more hustle period, but I will do I don't call it hustle because for me that's that nervous energy that I don't want, that like adrenaline. I will just talk about it as like, I am grateful that I get to work some mornings, some evenings, and maybe the occasional weekend because I have so much that I want to be sharing. Yeah. And even that, I feel like I default into this now, hopefully relatively naturally, that reframe like into that more positive, optimistic frame of mind. I also think realistically, everybody needs a support network around them. We've moved over here without anybody else around. So I have been creating a community for ourselves through meeting other mothers, through going out. I've joined a netball team. I play for St. One now.
Nice.
I have an identity as just Sarah. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have to be the wellbeing person. I don't have to be the mother. I can just be me, which is tremendously liberating. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's having that time out as well. I was talking to somebody else actually at Baby Ballet last week because we're waiting for our daughters. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, gosh, I'm going out, for the first time next week in like 2 years. And I just was slightly astonished because if I don't give myself time, if I don't look after myself and give myself any self-care, I'm going to be rubbish. I'm not going to have anything else to give to anybody. So the message I want to try and share to people is, you can't do it all. It is always going to be a juggle, but it's not selfish to look after yourself. You need to understand yourself. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm repeating this self-awareness. No. But if you understand yourself and what you need, like I know I need sleep. I know I need quiet time. I can get really touched out by the children and noise sensitivity that honestly the cat will come to sit in the evening and I'm like, no, I'm really sorry. Please don't be on my lap right now. Yeah. And that's when I know I'm like, right, I don't want to sit here. And again, then I can catch it and think, I don't want to sit here and just watch TV. Mm-hmm. I need to go and have a bath. I love to journal. I love to meditate. It's what works for me. It's not trying to be all woo-woo or whatever. Yeah. It just works. I need to calm my system. I think a lot of this is about knowing yourself.
Yeah, okay. And that's all my questions.
Marvellous.
But thank you so much for coming on. I've definitely learned. I'm definitely going to learn all the meditation stuff and stuff like that. So it's definitely interesting.
Thank you so much. I could talk about this all day. I love sharing it. And I think if we can just pick up little pockets of things and just try and implement it, don't try and do everything all at once. Just if there's something that's come up you want to try, give it a go and see how it works.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Harvey.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.